All right. Welcome to the second movie night extravaganza takeover of the This Is Revolution podcast. My name is Forrest Miller, the movie night guy, and tonight we're going to be talking about the 1992 black comedy classic, thriller, rom-com, etc., The Player, directed by Robert Altman and starring Tim Robbins. Now, before I bring in my panelists for the evening, I'd like to remind you to like and subscribe to both my channel, Movie Night Extravaganza, and of course, This Is Revolution. Not sure which one you guys are watching it on right now, but if you're not subscribed to both of them, subscribe to both of them. And if you're not subscribed to the one you're not watching it on, subscribe to that one. Just, it helps out a lot. You can also support Movie Night Extravaganza on Patreon, where you get access to all kinds of amazing discussions and interviews and bonus episodes. And I don't know, we're figuring it all out. Links are in the description. So without further ado, let's bring on the panel, starting with Conan Neutron, the host of Protonic Reversal, and of course, the great band Conan Neutron and the Secret Friends. How's it going?
Fantastic. Long time no see, Forrest. Must be
like 24 hours. So you brought us into watching this. I've never seen this movie until now. So I definitely like to ask what made you decide to watch this movie specifically?
Yeah, sure. So this is one of my favorite films, and it's something where it's very bleak. It's a very dark comedy in its way. It's very of its time, but in certain ways, it's also very timeless. Like, it hits my sensibilities just right because it's very clever. Like, there's a lot of Rick Dalton moments, as we've talked about. I see the guy from The Thing doing this stuff. There's a lot of that, but you don't have to care about literally any of that to enjoy what is a very, dark fairy tale about Hollywood. I mean, to the point that there's references to other movies, like within the movie, that are happening while you're watching the movie. Like, it's a really well done. I'm a big Altman fan. I think Altman's great. I think this is, for my taste anyway, this is my favorite work of his, and I think it's way underrated, frankly.
Cool. Yeah, for sure. All right, I'm gonna bring on Deep State Cuba to represent the This Is Revolution fam, and of course Summer Tan is joining us as well.
Hi.
So I'm happy you guys are representing tonight, since both Jason and Pascal are not on. I feel like I've been handed the keys to a great.
Yeah, we're here to make sure you don't crash the car.
Yeah, well,
stay in your lane. Keep your eyes on the road.
Can you really stop me from crashing the car if I take a hard enough left or
don't make me reach over there, young man.
with a good price, I can be bought. So if you want to crash the car,
yeah, it's
let's not go risky business here. Let's.
So both of you. So have you watched this movie before? Because this is one of Conan's favorite movies, and he's been wanting to do an episode on this for a while, and I'm happy that this month we were able to do it, because it's like scheduling all the different movies out has been kind of crazy. So yeah, is this your first experience with it?
It is my first time watching it.
We watched it last night. For me, it was a rewatch. As a college cineast, I went through every curated top 100 list that I could find instead of going to classes, and I remember watching this movie and being relieved that I wasn't going into the entertainment industry. Instead, I picked a much more wholesome career path.
Yeah, you didn't watch MASH?
No, I like the Deep State. Turns out it's a lot more friendly and supportive than Hollywood.
Yeah, I mean,
about the same amount of waterboarding.
Famously always there for each other. No one ever ends up dead. Can't say that about can't say that about Hollywood. So I have a couple clips to play tonight. I think I'm gonna cue up the first one. This is Robert Altman explaining kind of what the movie means, and because there's a lot of different threads to this, I think, and there's no one genre. Like this is clearly like a genre bending movie. Like there's no specific, thread to follow. I guess it's part comedy, part thriller, part rom-com. Like there's so many different genres within it. Part noir movie, So yeah, Gene, do you want to cue that up?
The film is not an homage to anything, but the film is about films, and it is a film, and I wanted to constantly remind the audience that this is just a movie. The opening shot was an 8-minute tracking shot. Is a conceit, but it's what people talk about. People talk about, that wonderful shot that went on for X number of minutes in Touch of Evil or all the various films. Film buffs talk about that. So by me opening this film up with a shot like that exceeded most of those shots, so that there was a real effort put out. It wasn't just a parody. I mean, we worked very hard on that shot, and it's a rather well done shot. But all said and done, it's not really storytelling. The shot itself becomes storytelling rather than the elements within the shot. So that's, again, using the thing as the thing it is becoming and constantly telling you, this is a movie. Here's a signpost. Here's a signpost. Constantly. Let's go in here. So you see on the wall movies like Prison Break, those film noir types of films, the B movies, that what this was.
I kind of feel like I'm ready to wreck.
The player is about itself. The end of the player tells you that the film you have just seen is the film we are now talking about. But it turns on itself like a snail almost. Action! Eventually becomes sort of spherical, which is the kind of thing I look for in films rather than something that's very linear. At the end of the film, Griffin Mill tells June all the things that go in to make a successful film.
Suspense, laughter, violence, hope, heart, nudity, sex, happy endings.
All of those things are in this film, either successfully or unsuccessfully, but they're all in the film. So the film itself, since it was about films, to make that film up, I used various elements from various other films. I used those kind of elements. So I didn't want to make it all suspense. I was not interested in making a suspense film. I was not interested in making a flat-out broad comedy. But all those elements are in there. So I was able to always slip into that this is a movie. This is what a movie about this would look like. And I went, of course, further back into older movies. So many times the film will go along and suddenly it'll seem to go into a little different style. And those styles are very acceptable in considering the totality of the player, because it's what it's made up of. It's about movies. I didn't feel that we were committing a subversive act, but to me it was just an essay. Action. The system I was skewering was the system of the United States of America and most of Western civilization that is mainly thrusted is based on greed and what we teach our children. But I don't think that the player is a metaphor or I don't think the player is a skewering of Hollywood. I think that Hollywood is a metaphor for the cultural problems with Western civilization.
Yeah, so there's a lot going on within that clip. I don't know. Summer, do you think he did a good job skewering Western civilization, I guess American society in general, with this movie and what Hollywood really represents within that? Or
I probably my knowledge about Western society is still forming. I wouldn't comment on that, but I would like to say that I think the movie really nailed at irony. I like it a lot. There's a lot of like sarcastic moments that makes you really gets it, and it kind of point at some of the phenomena in society that everyone is laughing about, and now like we did, the irony presents at its most intense. So I really love the movie.
Yeah, I think this is my first couple times watching it, and the first time I watched it, I think I didn't really get it. I watched it like on Friday or something, and then watching, I think, through Robert Altman talking about it and kind of what he was trying to achieve with it, and then rewatching it twice within the last 2 days, I think I've cemented a lot of different thoughts about it. But like, I definitely really like it too, and as someone that's like really into film, it's clearly made by someone who has like an encyclopedic knowledge of film in general, like to an insane level, I think. But at the same time, like there's the undercurrent of kind of the greed that he's talking about, and like the 90s kind of being the pinnacle of that, and like so I think that he does a really amazing job with that too. I mean, I have a bunch of different themes to go into with this, but I wanted to know if anyone else had any threads they wanted to follow from that clip.
Well, I think that he mentions that it's not supposed to be skewering Hollywood. It's more a bigger social critique. But one thing that I think Conan zeroed in on is that this is a film that is very much of its time, and it feels like 1992. It's still kind of the extension of the long 1980s. It's a yuppie film with studio execs as the main protagonists. So the milieu is this kind of cutthroat corporate environment. There's money everywhere. You also see things like Pasadena being a place with, you could plausibly have some street crime. You might die from a run-in with a mugger that gets too aggressive. And the suits, right? The really baggy suits that Tim Robbins is wearing, that everyone's wearing. The look and feel is very specific to this kind of turn from the 80s into kind of like the greater despondency and like chill of that I associate with the 90s and with grunge. And I think that a lot of those elements are now harder to square. Like, well, I was telling Summer that at that time in 1992, you could get away with staging a murder to look like a robbery because there was still a very high level of urban crime. City centers hadn't been gentrified, and the police are going to show up. They're going to take one look at it, and if you don't get a particularly industrious detective, they're just going to be like, yeah, a poor black guy did it. Definitely. Yeah. They took the
or a poor
you name it, right?
Yeah.
Poor despised minority of the moment and the city, and or a homeless person. And
it's that moment right before the, like, I hate to throw it this roughly into like our moment now, but like the Biden crime bill was 2 years in the making. Like, this was being argued. I mean, like, 1992 was just when Bill Clinton was taking office, and literally did it on the back of watching a mentally challenged man go to his death and get executed in front of him in Arkansas to prove that he was a tough on crime Democrat. Like, so yeah.
And the thing is too that so in the movie, Tim Robbins is a power executive at a major Hollywood studio. He starts getting these threatening postcards from a mystery villain that he assumes is a writer whose script he's rejected or he's strung along, or he's wronged in some way. And there's also another executive that's younger, hungrier, and he's worried is gunning for his job.
And just a little shorter.
Mhm.
I don't
And
know.
just a little short.
Every scene, Tim Robbins seems to get taller.
He looms, right? Like he's
Well, and
definitely got
also
the
Tim
height
Robbins' character is a character that has wronged a lot of people and has like gone
Mhm.
like sort of like above and beyond even just the station of being the guy who has to say no to stuff all the time.
I mean,
Been
he's an
kind of a
asshole
dick.
by
Yeah.
80s yuppie standards.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Like, which is saying a lot.
He's an asshole to the point where Burt Reynolds, without being cued to say that this guy's an asshole, there was no line written for him. Says, "Oh, this guy's an asshole,"
Yeah.
presumably about Tim Robbins.
Yeah.
And
He's assumed he was based on the type of person that he was playing, and he was
yeah,
correct.
And now one thing that I found interesting is he tracks down the writer, a writer he's wrong that he assumes is the person sending the postcards. They get into a fight. He kills them, and then he has to deal with the fallout.
somewhat accidentally kills him in a fit of rage. It was very funny watching this the same week that the Many Saints of Newark came out, because there was a very similar scene in that movie. But he loses control. I think in a way that he wouldn't necessarily lose control. I mean, he's losing control in general. So it's kind of a metaphorical death in that sense.
There were a couple of things about that murder scene that really stuck out to me. One is when people go too far and accidentally kill someone in movies and TV shows now, you don't stage it to look like a robbery. You destroy the evidence. It's like bleach and fire, right? Like there's too much CSI for people to think that you can just try to pin it on a street criminal.
Hey, Gene, can we see picture number 4 while we talk about this?
By the way, the writer in question that he thinks is sending the postcards, a young Vincent D'Onofrio, I might add, one of his first roles.
Unrecognizable. You
definitely don't see him as. Oh no, I said picture number
and the thing, and we're watching Stranger, the Korean show on Netflix, and there's a similar scene where one character gets provoked by another person and attacks them. But when he realizes what's happened and sees his victim slumped on the floor, he immediately tries to revive them. And he's like worried about their well-being. And that's another thing that I realized, right? Nobody stops or shows remorse in these accidental Hollywood murders. It's all about destroying evidence and trying to cover it up.
Mm-hmm. And for the studio, it's the same thing. The feeling that you get throughout the movie is that nobody cares that a writer's been killed. And a big part of it, I think, is a class division, which is interesting that this kind of gets brought into it this way. But like the studio executive and the writer have a large class division between them. And of course, now talking about the PMC, like the professional managerial class, I think that you would have a more, like a more interesting, map of where those two class positions maybe are. But in this case, it's a failed writer that is pitching these screenplays. Clearly, throughout the movie, I think it's referenced that he isn't very good at screenwriting, or it's implied that he isn't very good at screenwriting. So it's interesting that there's this large class divide between Tim Robbins' character, like Griffin Mills, and this writer.
Well, and if I may, the thing that look at Larry Levy, like the young up and comer that's angling for Tim Robbins' character job. He suggests at one point, well, why don't we just get rid of writers? Why do we need them? Why don't we just take these headlines and we'll make movies? Hey, read me a headline. Great. Let's make a movie out of that. And just the sheer just dismissiveness of oh, we don't really need them, right? We don't need this, these pain in the ass creatives. We don't need them. We can still make, great movies based on any of that. And that's
and there's that scene where they go around. I mean, that same scene, they go around the table and he has each executive read a headline. And then he off the top of his head, he comes up with a movie that could be based around that headline.
Yeah. And that's what he's angling for, which
so
nowadays, it's prescient, right? Because you think about how hey, do we really need reporters? Why don't we just, like whatever, let's take a tweet and that will be our, yeah, exactly. As you saw exactly where I was going with that. And it's just,
Or
it's
AI
Exactly.
produced writing.
We taught this AI how to write a Hollywood blockbuster. Here we go.
Netflix tried that and it's terrible.
Well,
was
and I think
Really?
There was that joke one that went around where somebody pretended that they had an AI write an episode of Scrubs, but it clearly wasn't an AI writing an episode of Scrubs.
Yeah.
Like I think they had written it, but it was
written in the style of an AI trying to write an episode of Scrubs,
Yeah.
which is a whole different level of inception as far as that goes. For me, and I want to say this while I got the chance, because I know we got a lot to cover, but I think the Richard E. Grant director character, like his pitch and his entire arc throughout the movie, is the key to understanding this movie, because he comes in as this complete like left field, him and his writing partner Dean Stockwell, and he's got this pitch for this, it's really like it's an art movie, no happy endings, like this is real, like a real a woman has died because of this. Like it's like he's clearly like very passionate about this film. And then you watch the entire arc of as the film gets made, which, by the way, Tim Robbins' character has envisioned as greenlighting as a revenge vehicle to basically make the other guy look bad. So
Yeah.
it's like this art film is getting made as a spite house, basically.
And
right?
a couple of exact quotes from this, because I wrote a lot about this. Of course, there's no stars on this project. We're going out on a limb on this one because the story is too damned important to be risked by being overwhelmed by personality. That's fine for action pictures, but this is special. There are no stars, no pat happy endings, no Schwarzenegger, no terrorists. This is a tragedy in which an innocent woman dies, because that happens. But he says it in a Gene style British accent that I can't.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and this is Richard E. Oh, sorry, but I was gonna say with Nail and I. Like this is a guy that made like cool, awesome, really creatively viable, even now, art house movies. So to have him playing like this idealistic director, I think is such a great cast. And also, he's a great actor. But go ahead, please, Summer.
Yeah, I was saying that this is another ironic moment because, I feel like this kind of like story kind of shows the real attitude of a movie industry towards like the art films. And then on the other hand, Griffin Mills, the main character in that large party, was saying that movie is art. Oh, movie is like preserving arts and like it's high form of arts. And then it's really, really just hypocritical at that moment. Like you saying that movie is all about art, but when you actually get an artistic screenplay, you basically reject the highest form of art inside of it.
Yeah,
valuable only for bureaucratic competition.
Yeah, no, and it's the idea of like
exactly, yeah.
I mean, Oscar films, as because they mentioned like Philadelphia, which is obviously the movie about AIDS, like movies like that kind of leave you with this feeling of just deep despondency. That kind of the only reason that anyone really makes them is as Oscar bait. Like in the end,
Schindler's List, or like when Crash solved racism, stuff like that.
Oh God, are you gonna go on another Crash rant?
No, I've spoke. Look, we don't have enough time for me to talk in trash this time. But then, like,
you can bring in Hans Zimmer for extra points.
It's a scream callback. But like Cynthia Stevenson's character, her Bonnie, she's an idealist, right? She still believes that, like, as much as like she's part of the system, whatever, she still believes that, like, it matters. Like, creative integrity matters. Green Book, that's another great one from the chat box.
It turns out that she cares more about the creative integrity than Richard E. Grant, right?
Because at the end. Guess what? I love,
like, it's just a movie.
I love that. And spoiler alert, everyone. Spoilers, everybody. You have Bruce Willis, you have Julia Roberts, and it's got it like the most ridiculous happy ending. And I love that they did it for free, because they're like, that's great. Yeah, I'm in. Let's do it. Because it's like that shows fans some self-awareness, at least. Yeah.
In the interest of time, so I had kind of an interesting theory about this movie. And so I grabbed a lot of, we don't have to look at all of them, but I grabbed a lot of screenshots. So starting with Gene, can we get screenshot number 1, picture number 1? So I had this theory about, the color within this movie. I think is really interesting because a lot of it seems to take place within Griffin Mill's mind almost. Like this woman obviously is perfect for him. Like she doesn't want anything. Like the woman that he's with, Bonnie, in the beginning, is obviously someone who's incredibly idealistic, is part of this world. The only way that Griffin Mills can kind of connect to her throughout this movie is by talking to her about work stuff. And even when he tries to say, hey, I don't want to talk about work stuff when he's at, dinner with Angelica Houston, or no, when they're in that scene where they point out Angelica Houston and then he's at dinner with like these other executives, the only thing that he can think to talk about is work. And the only way that he can connect to people around him is through work. And then he meets this girl, he meets this woman, June, who's the girlfriend of the writer that he ends up murdering. And it's interesting that every time you see her and you see this kind of idealistic, cold, they called her the Ice Queen. The character, the writer that he murders, calls her like the Ice Queen. But there's like this almost fantasy level of like when he's looking. Gene, can we see number 2?
Manic
like
pixie dream sociopath.
Yeah, but so when he's watching her, it's this kind of strange this blue light that kind of permeates through her entire studio. And it's not someone that
Cinderella. She's princessy.
Yeah.
She only wears white in this whole movie.
Yeah, that too. So I noticed that there's this red light. There's red light and there's blue light throughout, like through these different settings. So when he's watching her in this space, which I would assume in some ways is like his own mental his own mental trap that he's created. There's this blue light that permeates it. But then when you look at can we see picture 4 again? When we see like the murder that he does, like one of the few moments where he loses control, he's angry and it's like real emotion. It's this like it's bathed in red light every single time. Like
Very
the
purposeful.
murder.
The colors are like it's very consistent the entire time.
Yeah,
it's like an emotional prism. We get the color that reflects his state of mind.
Yeah. Gene, can you cycle through 5, 6, and 7 just quickly? Like these are just different moments from the murder scene that
the super producer hopping tonight.
That's good technique.
So it's these like this red light bathed in everything. And this is blood red, and it appears over and over again throughout the entire movie, from the murder scene to the next image that I have is as he leaves. It's the Japanese restaurant that they're at with the karaoke, and that's red. This is red, and David Cohane throughout the movie, the writer, is bathed in red when they're having this heated exchange, and it goes from blue to red, and it switches through that. And then the next time you really see this red is that next one, the snake. The snake is bathed in red, and as he kills the snake, he's also bathed in red. And he's driving his car, and the car is blue. Like the light in the car is blue, like reflecting off of everything. So I don't know. I found that fascinating. I mean, I don't know if anyone else wants to comment on this. I just realized this today and was like, grabbing these images from different parts of the movie and really just found it fascinating that like it's like we're exploring this. We're kind of in Griffin Mill's mind, and as these moments happen where he shows genuine emotion for like the few times in the entire movie, fear, anger, hatred, like all of those emotions are bathed in this light in both cases.
Yeah, I mean, like, and I think that Greta Sashi, I don't know how to say her last name, but June Goodman's daughter, that character is like, it's the perfect girl for him because she's like engaged with her art, but like doesn't really give a damn. She seems to have like extreme anhedonia about everything. It's like kind of like borderline sociopathic almost herself without, some of the same tendencies. And like, it's so convenient that it's like, oh, and she's also like the ex-girlfriend now of like the Vincent D'Onofrio character writer.
Yeah, she's a trophy from his first murder.
Yeah.
Yes.
But also she's kind of throughout the movie, she's never bathed in that red light. Like, you know what I mean? Like she's always bathed in that blue. She's kind of the ideal state that he wishes to be in because she just embodies that cool blue. Like she doesn't really care about the murder that's happened. You know what I mean? Like she instantly is like, oh, like I'll just, jump to this guy. Like she kind of realizes that she has to care about it when they're about to. She's like, oh, are you going to make love to me? Which is a very weird line. But that's also why I felt like we were trapped in his brain, because she's like, are you making love to me or something? And it seemed like she, but
in a way, I feel she's a little bit passive. I don't see much of her going on. It's all about his fantasy and her purity. It makes it perfect for him. But then, what is her actual dream? What does her paintings reflect? It's just blank.
Yeah, and there's really nothing, and and it doesn't. She doesn't even want to sell them. Like she doesn't.
She's like human Valium.
Yeah.
Again, perfect for him.
Well, she's from Iceland, and is like in the chat, she paints abstract ice. Everything's in cool blue. It's icy colors, right? But it's like in a way that's perfect for him because he doesn't like have like the emotional acumen to be in a real relationship, clearly, as mentioned by the fact that Bonnie just kind of gets, other than if they aren't talking business, then like they aren't talking about anything. Really, like there's nothing there for that relationship.
I have one more picture to show. Gene, can we show picture 11? So when Bonnie finally confronts him, after that the one where she's confronting him. I should have been more. No, not that one. Wait, it's
different confrontation.
Yeah,
there you go. Yep. Ah, no.
Yes,
that's it. There we go. Yes.
Yeah. So finally, she's wearing purple throughout the entire movie, like this kind of which kind of makes her more of a realistic character. She never really has those lights on her, and then when she finally confronts him, her shirt is covered in that red color, and there's also blue in there, like. And this is the moment where she finally has some emotional catharsis, because I think she's one of the few, I think, real people within the movie. I mean, not to use the cadence that Tom, I can't remember his name, Tom, the writer that says, oh, real people, when he's pitching the thing, but like, she's kind of one of the few realistic characters in this movie. She's not swept up into this fantasy. She legitimately believes that, the movie that got pitched about Julia Roberts in the, who gets put into the gas chamber for execution should go that way, because this is something realistic. She's one of the few actual grounded characters.
And is incensed about it when it doesn't. Right. And is upset, and legitimately is the proxy for the audience of whoa, you totally changed this and sold out completely. And then at that point, the Richard E. Grant's character was like, well, I want it to be successful.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, it's a very interesting moment because, he Griffin Mills, I think one scene before that is explaining, all of the different parts of movies that need to be there for a movie to make sense, which it's interesting that Robert Altman's like, oh, those are really the elements in this movie that we wanted to portray. But he says the most important one is a happy ending. And the Richard Griffin, what's the actual actor's name?
Richard E. Grant.
Richard E. Grant, yeah. So the Richard E. Grant, character that's pitched this realizes that the audience hates the ending that he's come up with.
Yeah, they don't like it because it challenges them, right? So they don't like it.
And Larry Levy, he sets this up earlier when he talks about another movie, Basic Instinct or Fatal Attraction, where the studio ended up going with the audience approved, audience endorsed ending rather than the original one, and it became an international hit.
Because the test audiences hated the original ending, right? I think that's what
exactly.
It was.
Yeah.
And
no, go ahead.
So another thing that I found really interesting, and Summer and I talked about this, and it kind of goes in line with what you're suggesting about solipsism, is that Griffin Mills, he's preoccupied with Larry Levy, but it turns out that they can coexist perfectly well by the end.
Yeah. So this is the second clip that I had for this, and it's about since we're kind of we're getting over the halfway point. I wanted to talk about the I wanted to talk about the cameos with like the constant cameos throughout this, the improvisation of that, and the movie pitches that you see at the beginning of it. So I have a clip where Robert Altman talks about that. But because I guess the pitches were themselves improvised, and a lot of the cameos that we see.
Like we're talking about already multiple watches. Like those pitches are brilliant. Like if you actually listen to them.
And this film has more Oscar-winning actors and actresses than any other movie in history, which is another really interesting point about it. So I wanted to talk about that.
They did it for scale. They did it for scale, right? And they donated their fees because they were like, "This is awesome. It's awesome that somebody's doing this."
Yeah, and then I also we should definitely talk about Summers Point too. But I just since we're kind of hitting this more than halfway point, I wanted to get the second clip.
Don't give Summer the Bonnie treatment.
Well, we'll talk about that later.
Play a piece of music. You go ahead and eat your first course, and then we're going to come up and do this in front of the microphone again. Only it's going to be for our film.
The only difficulty is that with the number of celebrities that would show up every day or so, be a background actor, you can't very well just ignore Jack Lemmon or Julia Roberts and treat them like extras. So they require a certain amount of everybody's time, and they're doing this as a favor. They're doing this free. So you can't say, get over there and do this right now or you're fired. So it put that kind of attitude, which was a lot of fun making the picture, put a lot of constraint on the time. So I would find myself running short of time.
Hey, Johnny.
Hi.
Griffin Miller.
All of these actors that showed up and played themselves, and there's many people that came out in a lot of those scenes that were producers and just people in the business that would just come out to play with us that day. Never once did any of those people say, "Can I see a script? What's this picture really about?" I mean, my pitch was, I'd say, I'm making a film about a studio executive who murders a screenwriter and gets away with it. It's a happy ending. And they would laugh and say, I'll do it, count me in.
The next time you want to badmouth me, have the courage to do it to my face. You guys were all the same.
And it was very courageous, I think, of people to do that because they didn't know what I was doing. We found very few people who were paranoid about it.
What do you got for me? Okay, here it is. The Graduate, Part 2. Oh, good. Now listen.
In the opening pitches with Buck Henry and Joan Tewksbury and Pat Resnick and Adam Simon and Alan Rudolph, those were not written. Those were films that they themselves felt they could do, wanted to do, and they went in and they just pitched those films. So every bit of that was, now they knew it was being filmed, and they knew they might have tried to make it a little funnier. They might have had, because they're all filmmakers, so they had some. It wasn't totally honest. I mean, totally factual, but it was truthful.
They've got a daughter who's just graduated from college. That's good. Young blood. 22, 23-year-old, like a Julia Roberts.
The Graduate 2. Pitched by
Buck
Henry.
Part 2. It's part 2.
That's right.
No, so I don't know. I wanted to get that. I wanted to get that on the record, I guess, since we're about to hit 40 minutes and we only have an hour. As
well,
something...
when we were watching it, cool, like, because I'm from different background. I don't watch as many Western movies when I grew up, so a lot of those actors and actresses I would totally miss. And Kuba was poking me, hey, that's someone. I'm like, who? And then he had to literally dig out the Wikipedia, and then I was like, oh, that person. But
so Burt Reynolds is a big Hollywood star who was also Prince of all the rednecks for a really long time.
Yeah. Which, by the way, it's interesting to see him after Norm Macdonald's passing, because he had that hilarious SNL bit where they did Celebrity Jeopardy.
Yeah. But
Summer,
yeah,
I'm so glad that you had a man there to explain all that for you. That was very important.
Mansplaining.
I'm more than my gender. I'm also a white man.
Yeah. Please, sure. I'm also white.
Ooh. Well, a little bit take on like gender issues there is like couldn't help but to like take a deep look at these female female characters. I do not really like June because, like, as you guys pointed out, she felt too much like a fantasy dream girl, like trophy wife. And Bonnie is just totally tragic. But one thing they two share in common, I think both of them said a line like, "What about reality?" And then when June asked Mills, I forgot what is the response, but the way Bonnie presented it was right before she got fired, and she was really just protesting against the industry, and that's really interesting. However, my favorite one is actually the female detective. I know we watched the movie about
Whoopi Goldberg, right?
Whoopi Goldberg.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, I really like her.
So much better
She's
than the View era Whoopi Goldberg, by the way.
Well, she does the thing that kind of like keep him off kilter by being like, "Is this your tampon? This isn't your." And then you see Tim Robbins is in there sweating bullets the whole time. Like, whoa, how do we get out of this? And like,
which, by the way, isn't apparently a written scene.
No, that was all ad lib. And I love that. Yeah. Like, you just go that way with it. I think that's a great role. Because it's sort of like it implies that she's a lot smarter than she's letting on, which is
in that same
which
interview.
Is absolutely true.
Yeah. No, but in that same scene, in that same interview, Robert Altman talks about how he wasn't originally going to give Whoopi Goldberg the role, and she was like, "I could play the detective," and he didn't like have a picture in his mind of what the detective would look like, and then they kind of worked it out like a skit where they would just kind of like, you know, go back and forth, everybody in the room coming up with like these different ideas, and that's where the tampon idea came from.
And I'd forgotten about that too, and I was just like, what a cool, you know, that's a great tactic for like unnerving someone that's already clearly like nervous and is gonna make a mistake, right?
Yeah, she basically cracks the case immediately, and just shortage of evidence prevents him from being prosecuted.
Well, and Lyle Lovett being identified in the lineup, yeah, like because he looks like a creep.
Well,
that was definitely him.
The other thing that really jars the fuck out of you in that scene is bringing up Rodney King, which you know immediately kind of smashes you back to reality, because you know you're kind of in this fantasy world where you know all this stuff is kind of happening in movies, and Whoopi Goldberg kind of like hits you in the face with like a real life actual thing that's just happened a few months before they were filming this. And you know what I mean, with like the LAPD beating the fuck out of a innocent like black like civilian, and she's like, "Oh, we don't get the wrong person in Pasadena. Like that's what they do in LA." And you're kind of brought back to earth after kind of being in this like weird, like you're kind of in Griffin Mills' mind prism the entire movie, and suddenly you're grabbed back to reality. Like, oh fuck, this is what's happening at the time this movie is shot.
Yeah, I sure hope they don't treat that nice Griffin Mills like they treated Rodney King.
Well, you know, you're going to. I mean, no, but you're like the pitch earlier in the movie, like the assumption of it. The pitch earlier in the movie is, you know, when the pitch is made that like, oh well, you know, a lot of things happen to black people within society. Like, now we're gonna do something to a rich white person. You know what I mean? Like, so you're brought into that mindset.
That is actually
like,
yeah, that's a good point. That's because that is in the original pitch, like the sort of like creatively viable art house film pitch. You know, real things, that terrible things happening all the time. Like that's absolutely.
And then, but then it obviously doesn't happen because the happy endings thing supersedes it, because you are watching a movie and you're kind of brought into this. What did Robert Altman call it? Like kind of a snail turning or something, like, you know what I mean? Like this circular movie plot, but it does like give you this red herring, in the term that we talked about for like 2 hours yesterday.
There's a lot of red herring talk.
Yeah.
I was stacking steaks and we were deciding whether they were Trump steaks or not. Right?
I completely forgot about that part of our conversation. We're gonna fake steaks, folks.
Movie night extravaganza. That's what they call it. More and more people are talking about it.
And also, it's clear from the from the defense attorney when they leave the police station that everyone knows Griffin Mills did it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter.
You got away with it. Yeah, you got away with it. Good for you. You know, like I'm just that kind of like, wow.
You're shoehorned into this happy ending, and I really like the point that Summer made about you know, the reality, like multiple characters talking about reality. I mean, like both, you know, female characters talking about reality, but also during that pitch, the constant talk about, you know, this is real life. Like we're not using any celebrities, which the irony of the entire movie is that Griffin Mills doesn't really have a personality. Besides, you know, his ambition is his personality. His manipulations are his personality, but you're not left with feeling like you really know who this guy is apart from that. You know, like he's someone who's fading away, that doesn't want to fade away, that's grappling with that, and might be coming up with these, you know, these other characters to keep him tethered to the lifestyle that he wants, or, you know, might be perfect for this. Like, you don't really know, I guess, throughout a lot of it, but the reality factor of it, like, you know, like you're expecting reality to come true, and then you're shoehorned into this happy ending because, as Griffin Mills says to June, like the happy ending is the most important thing. Like at the end of it, you realize like you're watching a movie, like, and it's kind of a circle. Like it is this weird circle that you're kind of brought into.
Yeah. The first time I saw him, I told Kuba that when I saw that guy, and because he did Shawshank Redemption, right? Like I'm a little bit ashamed to admit, but like first 30 minutes in, I finally realized that the actor was not Tom Hanks, because I think they two look so much alike. But I think like you hit a good point about personality, because I feel like the two are definitely the kind of a generic white man, like kind of good looking, but not that much, so enough to make you
tall,
sympathize with them. Yeah.
Is he good looking, or is he just tall?
My favorite term for
that.
I was gonna say my favorite term for that is handsome enough. I always thought that was a good term. Handsome enough.
Because the
tall, white, and handsome.
Julia Roberts' ex-husband, that guy is not handsome. Whenever he shows up, I'm like,
he's anti-handsome. Counter handsome.
It's also you know, the Julia Roberts joke. I mean, because it's kind of, you know, it's a joke the entire time, you know, like Julia Roberts is obviously like the it girl of the moment, and it's funny, you know, watching it in retrospect, not having watched it at the height of Julia Roberts' popularity, but like, you know, but it is like Pretty Woman's, you know, comes out I think the year after that, right? Like 93. Like you're kind of you're kind of in this moment of like Julia Roberts as like the most popular, and you can kind of substitute that joke for any number of actresses in different moments of time.
Scarlett Johansson, she'll play the Tim Robbins role too.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, no, exactly. Like but like.
See, that took a second. Right? Like, I did the thing.
There's a lot of. She would have played Whoopi's role if she could have.
Yeah, she played Whoopi Goldberg's role. She played Lyle Lovett's role. Scarlett Johansson played all the roles.
But and it's interesting because you can be a huge star as a man if you are a canvas. A kind of white guy that the audience in general can just project what they want to, and every man that people can fill with themselves, while to be the it girl it's not relatability that gets you there.
Right.
Yeah, I was wrong, by the way. Pretty Woman was 1990, which would make a lot more sense for this movie coming out in 92, but I don't know why I thought 93 was the year that came out, but
we regret the error.
I haven't watched.
An intern has been shot.
You think I can afford interns? No.
If you're paying for an intern, you're doing it wrong.
Well, and so it's also worth
I'm coming
noting-
from basically being the intern on multiple shows, like playing that. Which in podcasting, obviously, it's the produce. Like you're the producer. Like you know what I mean. You get a nice title out of it. But like,
Hi, Gene.
well, Gene's a little different. But like every other left independent media show, it's like someone who's aspiring to like do certain things that gets the producer title that's like in their 20s. You know.
Yeah.
True success
And now you're
story.
also host.
Yeah.
Well, now I'm host because I've gone rogue.
Yeah, you've taken it over.
Yeah.
Rogue Night Extravaganza.
Occupy. This is revolution.
if I may, real quick, Bob Roberts was referenced in the chat. A brilliant movie by Tim Robbins. A whole episode in and of itself for that. But that came out the same year. So it's interesting that like Tim Robbins at the time, and I think the word that kept springing to mind, Kuba, when you were talking was, I think it was tabula rasa, like just you like have meaning imbued upon you as like something of a blank slate, which Tim Robbins then decided to basically take a shotgun blast to the face with Bob Roberts, which is fantastic.
Well,
but that
which is a movie that he directed.
into that area.
Right?
No, he did, and it's great, and it was around the same time. I think they were at Cannes at the same.
Wikipedia says 92.
Okay, well,
Oh shit! Conan.
Hudsucker
that means I was right.
came
Yeah, I
out
had it
in
right the
94.
first time.
No, I said you smacked down the chat
Yeah, exactly.
like a volleyball.
Fact check. But the well, and what's point is now I can't remember my actual point, but like, oh yeah, but like he was like a leading man, like Bull Durham, like Mr. All American hero kind of guy, and like that's what started the Tim Robbins as activist, and the Tim Robbins as like, oh no, this dude's real political, right? And like, him and Susan Sarandon. Before Susan Sarandon became the hate tulpa or tabula rasa of everybody in 2016, like they were like, the lefty, like environmentalist activists putting on like plays and things along those lines. And it's so funny that this is like one of like the last roles where we still had that kind of like, oh yeah, leading man Tim Robbins, not character actor Tim Robbins, leading man Jacob's Ladder, of course. And to have it be in this, which is so kind of indicative of looking at those things and looking at it in its totality, and also like in a way ridiculing it but celebrating it at the same time, and giving a murderer a happy ending. He gets away with it.
Yeah,
right. I mean, like he gets away with everything, and he doesn't just get a happy ending, he gets the happiest ending, which is like so indicative
he
of
he gets two hands doing this.
Right.
And the whole time he's treated the postcard writer and Larry Levy as his antagonists.
Yep.
But it turns out that it was largely his own competitive solipsism. In the end, it's the success of the Bruce Willis, Julia Roberts execution movie, which obviously was going to be successful, was sort of a team effort by Levy and Mills, and it's exactly what his boss told him to. Don't worry about Levy, just keep doing your job. He's a member of the team. He can make you look good. All of that, which you're primed to think is just boss bullshit to try to calm down a potentially dangerous subordinate. It was all true. He could have just listened to them. And the postcard writer, it could immediately be bought, not for and not for a lot, right? It was never a threat.
Yeah.
And Larry Levy ends up working for him, right?
The roles get fully reversed. The other thing before asking for final thoughts, the other thing that I find very interesting that I didn't get to bring up is that throughout the movie, Griffin Mills is considered like the writer's executive, like as if he has some kind of special connection with writers that other executives don't have. But then obviously he's the one that literally murders a writer by putting his head underwater. Like it's an interesting the two sides of it are incredibly interesting. But I guess starting with Summer, final thoughts, because we have to wrap up.
Right. I don't have final thought, but I have a final question to you guys, because obviously you guys watch more movies. There's a game in the show, in the movie. So one movie is A movie is the combination of B and C movies. I was wondering if you guys could answer if this movie, the player is the combination of any two movies, or it's an exception.
Yeah, the player is what meets what.
That's interesting. So, that's a really good question. You want to force it's your show? You want to?
Well, definitely
first, so I can
Sunset
think.
Boulevard. There's definitely like partially Sunset Boulevard, I think. Of course, I mean, in the same sense that it's a movie about Hollywood, it's incredibly dark. The writer fucking dies. Like, I think it's pretty clear that it's part Sunset Boulevard, and it's part. I don't know what the second one would really be. I mean, there's any number I think of like these. I think there's any number of these various like corporatist, yuppie movies that come out throughout the 90s that you could really probably put out throughout there. But it's kind of it's an updated top down rendition of something to do with Sunset Boulevard. I think that's the one that it touches on the most.
I would say Chinatown, because at the end there's that like just very bleak last line. Forget it, Jake. It's Chinatown. It's the way it's always. It's basically being like it's the way that's always been. I think the player shows you like this is the way that it is, and did you think this was going to change?
It's Chinatown meets Big Trouble in Little China. call back to our episode 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, with just a little bit of Once Upon a Time in China.
Sure. Mash it up.
I remember it came out much later, but there was this sort of toxic Hollywood masculinity movie with Kevin Spacey for extra toxicity called Hurly Burly, which had a lot of that same Hollywood people talking about Hollywood kind of energy to it. And that kind of, for me, has the tone, the psychology of the player. But in some ways, and it's just because it's Tim Robbins and it's 1994, it meets the Hudsucker Proxy in the way that everything is very mannered and staged, and with the use of color, the costumes, the long tracking shots. It feels very formal in that way. So that's my final answer.
The other movie that it gets compared to the most, which is another Robert Altman movie, is MASH. So I guess it could be if I was like Sunset Boulevard mixed with like you know what I mean, MASH, like the Hollywood side of it, and then the top down kind of lampooning a big part of American society part of it. I guess that could be an answer to it. But I don't know if you can really include someone else's, like someone's the person that directed it there.
But yeah, I mean Chinatown especially also because crimes go unpunished, and I think that's a big piece of this movie is that like again, I say it again, he not only gets away with it, he gets the happiest possible ending.
Although it's funny that there's an expectation that crimes would go punished. Right, yeah. And that's, I guess, the absence of reality in Hollywood movies.
So I gotta close this up, because we're hitting that hour mark. I definitely want to say, subscribe, like. This is Revolution Movie Night Extravaganza. We're probably going to be back next month with Matthew Film Guy doing Mikey and Nikki, which is another Robert Altman movie. So that should be an interesting, isn't it?
Elaine May. It's Elaine May, not Robert.
Is that Elaine May? Oh, yeah. All right. Well, I
actually.
All right. Well, it's another similar genre pick.
One of my, I love that movie too. That movie's great.
Yeah, I haven't watched it yet, so this is
even more esoteric than this one, by the way. But yeah, it's fantastic.
All right, so I'm gonna close out here. Subscribe to patreon.com/movie night extra. Subscribe to This is Revolution and thanks everybody for coming on to this panel. This was a good episode. I wish we had like 3 hours to talk about this because there's so much that we could have touched on that we didn't even get to within this. But
yeah, it's a great movie.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, thank you. This was very
Thanks.
enjoyable.
All right, I'll just say with that, left is best.